Hello YouTube, we are back with another deck profile for you all today. Before we jump into the video, I did want to mention a couple of things. Be on the lookout for some content regarding Nationals. You know, Jarrell and I tried to do our best to create like a little bit of a vlog experience, and we also have filmed a post-Nats sort of reflection video that we're putting together for you all, so that should be out very shortly. So that should be fun. I think it'll be a nice sort of different sort of video for you guys to watch. Gives you our perspective on the convention, gives you our perspective on our matches that we played, how our experience was, and how our matchups went. So like I said, should be a fun video for you all to watch. We also had an EX-Antibody deck profile that I uploaded yesterday, so that'll be in the video description down below. And today's deck profile is going to focus on MetalGarurumon, which is probably considered the second best deck of the format, only second to EX-Antibody. As those who have watched the channel before, you probably will know that I'm a huge Garurumon stan, and I've always been a Melga fan since it came out. A lot of people think the deck is toxic. I see why, but I mean, I'm a Garurumon fan. I can't not play Melga. So I did main Melga back in BT9. I brought it back towards the end of like BT14, BT13, and I'm really excited to see how the deck does now with the addition of its EX-5 support pieces. It's still a very, very fast OTK deck with even more access now to draw power, consistency, battle protection, and restand. And it only will get more support with BT15 coming up just around the corner to make it even stronger, in my opinion. There were a lot of players playing it at Nationals this past weekend, so, you know, I was really excited just to play against it. I personally didn't run it at Nats. I ran Mirage Galgamon, but, you know, seeing Melga again, seeing Melga do Melga things was really fun. You know, and I think that, you know, we're going to be seeing a lot of it moving forward. So hopefully this deck profile video gives you an idea of what Melga wants to do, what it's going to look like now that we've got some more pieces and new pieces to add to it, and what it would want to do moving forward in the meta. So as usual with the deck profiles that we have on the channel, the first part's going to focus mainly on card choices and ratios. We then will move into a more discussion-focused section going over early game setups, starting hand picks, you know, and other tech choices to help, you know, do what you want to do and help achieve your win condition. So you know, if you want to skip towards that, I'll kind of link that sort of timestamp in the video description as well. But if you want to see what the deck looks like as it unfolds, you know, just stay tuned to the video. And lastly, before we get into the real sort of meat of the video itself, did want to say a huge thank you for everyone tuning in, both new and old. If you're new to the channel, you know, hopefully you like what you're seeing, and hopefully you could keep checking us out, and we've convinced you to hit that subscribe button. For those who are always tuning in and, you know, showing us your support, we really do appreciate every one of you, and we hope to keep making videos that you enjoy and can help, you know, keep growing the channel for you guys. So without further ado, let's hop right into the deck profile here. Alrighty guys, so in terms of our eggs, we're running 4 of the Bukamon from BT14, the one that gives jamming. I think until it gets restricted, there's really no other reason to run any other egg in most blue decks. You know, decks like Armors will definitely want like things like Wanyamon, but I think for what Garurumon wants to do, like Bukamon is just the egg for it. There's really no other reason to run a different egg. And then moving on to the rookies, we're going to start off with 4 of the starter deck Gabu. Really just nowadays, more so just a Gabumon target. The plus 1k DP has come up before, particularly with the older iterations of the deck, but I think right now with jamming, protections, and all of that, like the DP buff is not as important. But I just feel like other versions of Gabu, right? Like EX-1 Gabu, like tends to whiff a little bit. And then the promo Gabu that like help like searches top 5, looks for tamers, I just feel like doesn't have any space for this deck either. So I think the next best target was this Gabumon. I think moving into BT15, we'll definitely see this replaced with that BT15 Gabumon, but for now, I think 4 of this guy's just fine. And then we subsequently run 4 of the BT5 Searcher Gabumon. I still think probably one of the better searchers for this deck, being able to play this guy out early just helps you find your pieces and helps you look for things that you're missing. which is very similar to what Garurumon X-Antibody does from EX-5. Unfortunately, this little boy is going to be limited in about a month, so trying to gain value from him while I can. But he's really good because he allows you to search top 4, lets you pick up to 2 cards, and also puts 2 cards in the trash, so helps set up your battle protection mechanisms. Lets you pick up 2 cards, which is better than any other search in this deck outside of Cool Boy. And the inheritable to give yourself battle protections is what I think the Garurumon X-Antibody from BT9 was missing earlier, and now you have that. Now you can say, look, I'm not seeing Garuru X, I don't care, I've got Gabu X now, right? I think that speeds up a lot of mental for a lot of Melga players, because before, you know, if you were missing that Garuru X antibody, which gave you battle protections, you're like, you know, if I push out the stack too early, it dies and it feels bad. Now that Gabu X has that inheritable, you're like, well, I'm going to go Unga Bunga now. Like, I'm more aggressive with pushing out because of this guy right here. Moving on to the level 4s, we're just going to start off with 2 of the BT5 Garurumon, mainly because it just is a cheaper way to turbo into your top end. Again, the DP buff doesn't matter as much anymore, given that jamming is a thing and battle protections is so prevalent. But I think the efficiency and evolution is the reason I choose to run this over, say, for example, the purple starter deck Garurumon that we got in the most recent Melga starter deck. Moving on, we do run 4 of the promo Garurumon. Just one attacking draw is still really, really good. You do have to be wary about matches like Mirage Galgamon and whatnot who penalize that sort of action. But at the same time, you know, having the cycle and the draw power is really, really nice. And in a deck that likes to cycle and set up your trash, you definitely want to kind of replenish your hand size for sure. And then to round out the level 4s, we're going to be running 4 of the soon-to-be limited Garurumon X-Antibody. This boy is basically an Eismon scatter mode in a wolf's costume. I just think it's just so much value, right? You know, being able to on Evo draw 2, trash 2, so you're cycling, you're setting up your trash for battle protections, and you're gaining a memory on top of that. Pair this with Cool Boy, I mean, you're just skyrocketing to crazy amounts of memory, which is insane, particularly from Melga, which is something which, you know, it's just a deck that's so efficient in and of itself, and now you give it this piece, it's just crazy, you know, and I think there's a reason this card is being limited to 1 in the next month, but for now, he's not, so you might as well use him, right? Moving on to our level 5s, we do run 4 of the starter deck Were Garurumon. This is where your aggression starts to come into play, right? You know, Melga has always been a deck that has a lot of aggression at the level 5, you know, standpoint, and this card definitely adds to it. Being able to swing, pitch a card to restand is good synergy with this deck as well. And the inheritable to pitch a card to pop a level 4 seems like it's not really important, but I think it actually is, you know. With how well you can control the board with Melga, going into Melga X makes that play a lot more efficient. If you're able to start chipping away at your opponent's board with Werguru, Melga Ace, and when you do eventually go into Melga X-Antibody, that's when you can really just do damage on your opponent's board state. So I really do like this card as an overall package, which is why I do run it out of 4 of. We do have to run 1 of the promo Garurumon. I mean, as blue-based Melga, I feel like you almost have to. This guy just gives you so much aggression with Buka, having jamming potentially, and then being able to give your stack +1 security check if you have 8 or more cards in hand is also just, it's just too good to pass up. So I think you have to run it out of 1 of. And then we round out the level 5s by playing 4 of the new Were Garurumon X-Antibody. I chose to cut the old BT9 Were Garuru, mainly because you still get the restand off of this. Yes, you have to pitch a card in order to restand, which, you know, I think you achieve no problem because you're drawing so much with this deck and cycling so much. The inheritable is the reason I think this card is much better than BT9 Were Garurumon. The ability to restand your top end, I think is just huge, and that top end does also include Omni, mind you. So this card, I think, really adds a whole level of aggression to it. I think it's almost like a power crept Werguru X from BT9 in a way, just with a little bit of purple flavor to it. So I think just, you know, really, really good card, and I think definitely replaces the BT9 one for me. Moving on to the level 6s, we do run 3 Melga Ace and 3 of the old BT9 Melga X-Antibody. Melga Ace, I think, is probably one of the better, if not the best Ace cards. Being able to just cheat your opponent out of a turn because they weren't expecting this Melga Evo, I think is clutch. I think second of all, being able to evolve into a level 6 essentially for free while setting up your trash for your battle protections is absolutely immense. It is scary at times leaving a sort of like unprotected Ace card out on the field, even if it is evoed over, right? Like there are many different ways to deal with Ace cards, which is scary, but because this is so memory efficient and you're able to just basically climb into it for free, I think you kind of trade off the value there. So I think this card is really, really good. And then when attacking, I think a lot of people sleep on this effect as well. If you pitch a card, you can pop the lowest level, which again, going into Melga Ace, if you've cleared bodies with Garurumon and Melga Ace, you know, your opponent is going to be hurting for bodies, and if they only have one big guy on board, well, Melga Ace is going to be dealing with it very shortly, you know, or Melga X-Antibody is going to be dealing with it very shortly. So I think you're able to climb into various modes of removal for sure with this deck. We do only run one of the new Melga X-Antibody from EX-5. I only run it at a 1 of because I just felt like the card itself is really good, don't get me wrong, you know, as a super ice wall in a sense, and having a blocker on board is massive. But I just feel like in terms of aggression, this was not having as much as the old BT9 Melga X-Antibody did. You know, if we're thinking about going fast, OTK sort of mantra, I think the old Melga X is better. I could make a case to say, look, if we're running like purple base, you could definitely be running more of this Melga X-Antibody because purple tends to be a little bit more slower, a little bit more control based. But even then, like purple Melga is still at its core an OTK fast deck. So this, taking the tempo out of that was the reason I only have it at 1. I can see decks running it at a 2 of, but I really don't see a reason to run it at more than 2. I think any more than that, you start to lose tempo, which is not what you want to be doing with this deck. And then we round out the Digimon with 1 Omnimon. You know, Blitz Omni for game is still a thing, particularly with blue OTK decks. Like, there's no reason not to run it. In terms of our tamers, it's pretty standard. We run 4 Cool Boy because this is an X-Antibody deck. Being able to draw, gain memory, and search for a 2 cost is huge. We do run 1 Davis, mainly as a memory setter, as well as a search piece early game to help us find our blue pieces. A little bit more scary, as Garurumon and Melga Ace are not blue cards you can search for, but everything else is a blue card. So you do have the potential to whiff, but it is more controlled, which is where the purple-based Melga does tend to shine a little bit more because you can synergistically run your trainings, your memboosts without worrying about bottom decking pieces that you would want. But I think Davis is still a good searcher and also very good as a memory setter. You know, getting set to 3 as Melga can be really, really nice. You know, being able to work with a lot more memory than your opponent wants to give you is always good advantage there. We do run 1 X-Antibody Protoform and 2 of the old X-Antibody. I didn't run the Protoform before, but I think playing against folks at Nats, I do see the value in this. You know, being able to Digivolve for a slightly cheaper cost is always nice, but I think if your stack does get removed, this is a free recovery, you know, and sometimes you just need that extra turn, and that free recovery off a Protoform can sometimes give you that extra turn to say, look, you know, it's back in the stack, you've got to get an extra check-in before you go for game, and if you can't get the extra check-in, I've got a body in the back ready to go, potentially for 2-3 checks and going for game, you know. So that's why I think it's a sneaky like 1 of. I do think for Melga as a deck, the old X-Antibody is a little bit better, just because you're swinging so much and you want to be able to swing, go into your X-Antibody form, do it all over again. But I do find value in the X Protoform on certain situations, so that's why we do keep 1 of it in there. And then we round out the deck with 3 blue memory boosts. Again, I feel like you could go between training and memboost. I chose memboost mainly because sometimes it's nice to just be able to like slam down a Gabumon and start climbing and proccing your cool boys. to help with extra draw power and cycle, and trainings don't allow you to do that. Your Digivolution cost into your top ends is already so efficient that I just felt like trainings didn't really provide a whole value outside of just cheap search. So I thought, well, for one more cost, let me just throw down a searcher that does top 4 and gives me memory to work with next turn or whenever I choose to proc it, you know? So that's why I chose the Mem Boost over the trainings, but I could really just see it going either way. And that does do it for the deck. The photo of this will be in the video description down below, as well as towards the end of the video. And without further ado, let's hop right into the discussion portion of this video. Alright guys, so let's talk about what Melga wants to do as a deck, right? You know, compared to this to the BT9 version or BT9 iteration of Melga, I don't really think a lot has changed in terms of the core sort of win condition and the core idea of the deck. It's always has been and always will be an OTK deck. You know, we do have 2 variants now, which is a bit more interesting. We have the blue base and we have the purple base as well. My particular build will focus on the blue build, although I do feel like the purple base has some interesting components to it and some interesting tech choices when compared to the blue base. For those wondering what a purple based Melga would look like, I will have a photo of a purple deck or a purple version of it at the end of the video, along with the blue base that I am running. So if you're looking forward to that, it'll be there. I won't do like an in-depth discussion, however, on it, just for time's sake. You know, playing Melga, you will be focusing on building your stack in the back, utilizing your new Garurumon X-Antibody from EX-5 to start your draw power engine, as well as your memory efficiency to turbo up into your level 5. Your level 5s with Melga is really where a lot of your damage will come from, as you are able to swing and restand multiple times, which if you pair this with Bukamon that gives jamming and battle protection from your Garuru X and your Gabumon X antibody, you are able to do this multiple times and just really have a lot of aggression out of your stack. Now, some of you may ask, you know, if you have battle protection, why do you care so much about jamming? That's a good question, and I would probably respond, you know, that if I swing and I don't have my top end, I can just leave my level 5 out there, and the battle protection is an all turns battle protection. So I almost force my opponent to say, look, if you want to get rid of my stack, you either have to bounce it, you've got to DP reduce it, or you just got to straight up delete it. You can't swing over it, because I will probably have set up my trash efficiently enough where I can just bottom deck those sources to give my stack protection, you know? So the battle protection being all turns is why I think that, number 1, I care more about the jamming just to kind of swing willy-nilly. And 2, I also think why purple players can say that, you know, the deck is viable because you are cycling and trashing a lot, that your battle protections definitely become a lot more easier to achieve with that purple base. But yeah, you know, Melga is basically a deck that says, look, let me build my stack and let me watch it go burr. So let's talk about our starting hand here, right? As with all sort of OTK big stack decks, you just want to see the line and you want to start off with a rookie. So if I don't see a rookie in my starting hand, no matter how good the rest of the hand looks, I'm going to mulligan. And any rookie will do for me, but I think Gabu X is really, really strong here, because before, with the previous iteration of Melga, you were sort of like, look, I've got to build my stack, but I really want to see that Garurumon X-Antibody because that's what gave me my battle protections. Now, Gabumon X-Antibody in and of itself gives you battle protection, and with how easy it is to set up your trash with this deck, sometimes that's all you really need is to just say, look, I'm going to put a Gabu X here, and we're just going to go up the line. And I think that really adds to the tempo and the aggression of this deck. So if I see a Gabu X, I think we're set, you know, but otherwise any rookie will do. If you can set up your cool boys and maybe like a Davis for early search and cycle, I think that's also really beneficial for you. As you saw in my deck profile, I'm personally choosing to run the Mem Boost over the trainings just because, you know, when I'm digivolving, you know, in subsequent turns, a lot of what I'm doing is digivolving into like my Melga Ace, digivolving into my Melga X Antibody, and you really don't need to reduce the cost there. I feel like the boost, just to kind of give me more memory if I need to hard slam a Gabu or do something along those lines, I'd rather run the boosts. Both have that sort of downside of your top end with your WereGarurumon and your Melga Ace are both purple. So you can't really search for those cards with your boosts or your trainings. And you can argue that the trainings only cycle 2, so there's less chance of like bottom decking something that you need. But like I said, I prefer the memory gain over the Digivolve reduction just because the deck is already very efficient from a Digivolution perspective. So key pieces to highlight for this Melga deck, you know, particularly the ones that we got in EX-5. I've sort of talked about the Gabu X already, so we'll go ahead and just start off with Garurumon X-Antibody. I think there's definitely multiple reasons that we can see this boy being limited to 1. He's essentially an Eismon scatter mode for purple decks disguised in a wolf form. And on top of that, gaining a memory for completing the effect is extremely high value for a deck that's already super memory efficient. And it just makes this deck that goes burr, go burr even faster, which is really scary, right? You know, and pair this Garurumon X-Antibody with a couple cool boys. I mean, that's filthy, right? Like, you could potentially go into a Garurumon X, start off at 1 memory, and all of a sudden find yourself at 4 or 5 memory, which is absolutely busted, you know? Going on to WereGarurumon X-Antibody, I think this card is slept on a little bit. You know, I think some folks are still running the WereGarurumon X-Antibody from BT9, which, don't get me wrong, is a really good card. Being able to restand on Evo is really nice. But I think WereGarurumon X-Antibody lets you do that, but it also allows you to recur pieces from trash, which I think is a low-key clutch effect, because prior to EX-5, when I played Melga, as I'm pitching my cards, particularly with like Ace and, you know, the WereGaru to restand, I often find myself in a spot where I'm like, if I don't have enough cards in hand, I was afraid to pitch, because I'm like, I might need this moving forward and I don't have a way to get it back. You know, pitching rookies, pitching level 4s felt really, really bad and really kind of put almost like a hesitancy factor in the way that I played. But now with this card, I'm pitching stuff because I know that WereGaru X will let me just pick something right back up, you know, and I'm less afraid to pitch cards knowing that I can find ways to recur it back. And the inheritable as well, you know, being able to restand your top end an additional time is also really, really nice, which sort of makes up for not being able to restand on Evo directly, right? You can still restand by pitching, but, you know, being able to kind of do all those things, I think is just really, really good efficiency there with the WereGarurumon X-Antibody package. Melga Ace, I think, is a card to definitely discuss. You know, as I started first crafting this deck, I was like, oh yeah, I gotta run this guy at like a 3 of or a 4 of. But then the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, I almost would run this at no more than a 2 of. I'm personally running him as a 1 of just because you kind of lose a little aggression with him because you don't want to swing because there's no inherent restand ability. You want to keep him on as a blocker, and being able to use him as like a big mega ice wall is really nice, but it doesn't really do much outside of that. I almost would rather prefer to use the BT9 Melga X-Antibody to kind of string along my main plays, but I can definitely see the benefit to having an additional Melga X-Antibody to go into that helps present a more like defensive option. So I do see benefit to him as like a 1 or 2 of, but I don't see him more than a 1 or 2 of. I think any more than that slows your deck down too much. I prefer the BT9 one over this guy for sure. And I think other tech choices to think about is X Protoform. You know, I am running it as a 1 of. I did touch upon it briefly in the deck video or the deck profile section. But, you know, I think, particularly in today's meta, being able to just recover one is really nice, right? And there's many ways that the meta can get rid of your stack, whether it's by bounce mechanic, DP reduction, straight up effect deletion. You know, so I think having a protoform just being slipped back into security lets you pick up a piece and recycle pieces. I think it's just really nice. I think a 1 of is okay. I agree, you know, talking to TJ, talking to RB, you know, your X-Antibody from BT9 is still really, I think, more synergistic with how this deck wants to go. You want to swing and evolve and restand, swing, evolve, restand, do all those things. So I think the original X-Antibody is better, but I do see value in like a one-of protoform. So I did want to slip that one in there. Otherwise, it's a pretty standard Melga build. So that does wrap it up for the deck discussion. Here is the photo of the blue build for those who are interested, and that will be linked in the video description down below, along with the purple build, which is also now on the screen here. So for those who are curious to what a purple build would look like, that's what I would do. It's still, you know, up for discussion, up for tweaking. I do like the purple build in the sense that there is room for more consistency. You can run your purple memboost, you can run your purple trainings to a lot more safe effect, because you're definitely going to be picking up stuff. And like I said, the battle protection being viable for it as well, I think it really does make the purple base a lot more viable. You have access to more removal options with the purple base as well. And another spicy flavor would be to use the core Guru engine and like throw in the Beelstar sort of tech too. So I think purple base is a lot more flexible, a lot more adaptable. Blue base is very much like the Unga Boonga, let's go blue, let's go like OTK, blue, restand, swing sort of mechanic. But like I said, this one was my blue build. That's the purple build. And hopefully you guys enjoyed it. You know, hopefully this gave you some things to think about when building Melga. Yes, we're going to see a limit to it very shortly, but we are going to be seeing some added pieces come into play come BT15, which should make this deck even more interesting to build. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know what suggestions you would have for building this deck and how you would run this deck. And thank you all for tuning in. Like I said, if you're new and haven't subscribed yet, please feel free to hit the subscribe button. We would really, really appreciate it. And we'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.